Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how you can replicate or create this class ripper geometry nodes modifier I've created. We're going to go through the simple logic behind how certain things are created and how certain problems are solved, and hopefully by the end of the video you'll be able to replicate it in your own systems or create your own version. Now, without any further ado, let's get this started. The first thing you want to do is that you want to prepare your mesh. Now it is very important. What you want is a single-sided or one-sided mesh, and you don't want any thickness or any solidified mesh. And the next thing you want to do is prepare your UVs. Now, your UVs, if you are coming from Marvelous Designer, are probably very large. So what you want to do is hit A and then UV and then pack islands. You want to disable rotate and margin of 0.01 maybe, or something large, that so that it won't it will create this gap between the islands. It gives them more room. And what you want to make sure is that you don't have any weird orientations. You want your mesh islands or UV islands to be perfectly straight up, or you don't want them to be tilted or upside down. You want all your islands to be perfectly facing upwards. Now, once you have that, once you have your UVs set up, because UVs are the most important part of this whole process, you want to create two vertex groups. Now I do have them right now. One is called ripped and one is called fair for the frayed edges. And if we check them out, I'm not going to delete them, but if we check them out, you can see ripped is simply we're just drawing our ripped edges. And for fair, I'm going to go to edit mode, select the edges I want to fray, and then assign one weight, a weight of 1 to the fair, and it's going to look like this. Once I have my vertex groups ready and I have my UVs ready, what I can do is add a level of subdivision and go to advanced, boundary smooth, keep boundaries, and no UV smoothing. And that's how I can stack up my modifiers. If you are subdividing, it's better if it's on top. Then I can add the geometry nodes and start working on my geometry node setup. The first thing we want to do is create holes on the geometry. So how we can do that is simply we can get our named attribute. We have ripped, and then we could separate the mesh, separate geometry, and then use this to separate it. Now, as you can see, first we want to add a mass and set it to greater than. We want only greater values of 0.99. We don't want any soft values. As you can see, it's bleeding to these edges. We don't want these edges, so we can set the separate geometry to faces, and it's going to fix that. Once we have our separated geometry, we need a way of smoothing these edges out, because right now it's looking very jagged and it just doesn't look right. So what we can do is on inverted, we are going to separate geometry again, and then once we separated this geometry, we could use this same greater than value on the selection and set it to points or edges. Doesn't make much difference. And once you have this, we can do set position, because we want to smooth these edges. We can do a set position, then do a position, and the blur attribute set to vector to blur the position of these edges or smooth them out. We can increase this until we get something that looks very smooth and doesn't look bad. 15 is a good value, and once I have this, I'm going to do a set position on the actual geometry and then do a geometry proximity and set the position of my edges to the position of these edges that we just smoothed. So geometry proximity on edges, and we are going to connect position to position. It's going to look like this, and then we can connect this guy to selection, and your geometry is smooth perfectly. Now you are going to see like some of these edges start looking like that. The way you could fix that, you could create a curvature to then blur these edges as well. Or you could do, for instance, another set position in front of this. And as you can see, if you do smooth this out, you can see that it's smoothing all of it. But you could get your same ripped vertex group connected here, and then blur this as well. I'll connect that to the selection. Let's do a vector mass, set to a scale, and scale it by this way. Also, let's see how much. Okay, this is how it looks like. What we want is that we want the rest of the area to be 1. We could do a mix instead. Mix vector like this. The A value or the first value will be position, and the second value will be the smooth position. And let's also disable this. And as you can see, it's going to help us smooth that area a little bit better. And that's it for creating the holes. That's the basic logic of how you create the holes. Now, the way you want to smooth the areas outside of it, it really depends on you. Now, what we can do is that we can actually make this into a group. Let's hit Ctrl G to make this a group, and then where did it go? Let's go out, and okay, here it is. And we have an input. We have 2 inputs. One is for the ripped vertex group, and the other is for the inverted selection. The reason we did this is because we want to do the same thing on this thing, except this time we want to do it on their UVs, on its UVs. So the way we do that is that we do set position and then connect this here. It's going to look like that. Same thing, by the way, goes for both of them. And then we can do a named attribute, and we're going to sample a UV map and connect that to the position. And as you can see, we have the same UVs on 0 to 1 of our X and Y coordinates. And it's working perfectly. Now, We could do something because we don't have UVs, right? We have our, let's see, check out this. We do have our mesh, but we don't have UVs. And if we don't have UVs, we're going to have these glitches here. And in certain cases, it's much more visible. So the way to fix that is actually very simple. We can do a sample index, and then let's bring this down a little. We could do a sample index and sample by index, and this will be vector. Let's connect this to the sample index and want to sample the position of this, and then we are going to store named attribute, and we are going to store UV maps on. First of all, we need to sample index, sample the face corners, and here we also want to store face corners on UV map, and it has to be a vector, sorry, a 2D vector. And if we connect the position, sampled index position to this, it's going to fix our stretching. And if we disable and enable this, you can see that if I disable this, it's probably more visible. You can see our UVs look like this, and if I disable this, it's going to look blocky and jagged. So that's how we create the UVs for the generated mesh. And that's why also we created this group so that we can use it, reuse it later. Yeah, that's the basic logic of how you create these holes inside the mesh and how you smooth them out. As you can see, some parts are still not very favorable. You could either, where am I? Right. You could either add more weight in that area. Don't want any nothing on the pocket. Could either add more weight to that area or just make sure your node groups is doing a better job. It's not going to be visible, especially in cases where you have lower iterations. But yeah. Okay, now that we have this, we are going to create the threads. Now the threads were the actual part that really got me thinking, how do I do threads that would work with animation and make it that in a way that looked good. So to make the threads, we are going to work on this UV. We're going to work on this. It's actually very simple. So what we want to do is get the same ripped edges and do another separate. We are going to separate edges. And this is how we get our edges. Now, what we want to do to create the threads is that first thing first, let's also bring this very far. Okay. First thing first, we want to convert, we don't have a convert, mesh to curve. We want to convert these to curves. Now that they are curves, we are going to create mesh islands or curve islands or IDs for these curves, because right now they do not have IDs. Let's say we take an spline parameter or an ID, or I don't know, something like index. And let's check this out. Let's do a compare set to index equal, and if we compare IDs, it's going to be indexes. As you can see, it's running here. it's indexes, not IDs per spline. And if we do a spline parameter, it's also going to be indexes per spline. And indexes obviously are indexes, something similar, very similar to ID. So how do we do that? To create IDs, we could either capture mesh islands before we convert to curve, but that's capturing and it's actually adds more to the performance. Or we could do something much simpler. We could remove this and do a evaluate on domain, set this to integer and spline. We are evaluating indexes on splines. And if we check this out now on 0, we are going to have islands. Now, why do we need these islands? It's actually very important. We are going to need them because if we don't separate these islands, the threads we are going to generate are going to be all over the place. And after that, we are going to do a curve to points, curve to points. And we are going to do this by length, so that the number of points on each spline is actually the same. I mean, not the same, but their distance is actually the same. They're relative. And okay, now that we have these points, we could do a point to curves, and that's how it's going to look like. Now, obviously, it's not looking right. And if you do, let's do it, compare again, because okay, as you can see, we also don't have this index evaluate on domain because we don't have any spline domains. We have already converted to points. What we need to do is do a capture attribute on points or splines, doesn't matter. And as you can see now, or maybe splines. Why is it doing that? Oh, sorry, equal. It's actually working right. 0, 1, 2, we have our islands back. And as you can see, we have points to curves, and this points to curves has a curve group ID. So if I connect this to curve group ID, as you can see, it's going to separate all of this and it's going to work perfectly. But we need threads, we don't need them to like recreate the circle. The way to fix that is, first you need a mass and the position. What we need to do is tell it that, for instance, this point here needs to connect to the point in front of it, and this point here is going to be connecting to the point in front of it. And to do this, we need to say, for instance, this point has an index of 1, this point has an index of 1, and the point above it has a index of 3, and this point has an index of 3. So we need to create steps, and to create steps, we need to separate x, y, z, and this is on the y-axis, so we need the y, and we can multiply the y by a large number, for example 2000, and then we could do another mass, do add, and add this to our islands. Let's actually check this out before. As you can see, it's generating the lines, but it's missing some of them and it's not perfect, and especially if it's just to 1000 and maybe a higher length. As you can see here, for instance, it's bleeding to the other one. So if we add our IDs to the already generated steps, it's going to fix that. However, it's not going to fix it by default because we are right now doing, for example, 0, 1, 2, 3, So it's a very low step, it's a very low evaluation or some very low number that is being added to it. So what we want to do is multiply these ones and twos to 1000 or the same number we have here, so that the steps become much larger. So it's, for example, 1000, 2000, 3000 steps per spline island. And as you can see, now we have our threads, but there's a problem. There's a huge problem. These threads are sometimes connected to each other. Now, how do we fix that? You could experiment with these, like go 500, 500, and sort of try to fix this by these numbers, but that's not very practical. We need something that works on any situation. So what we can do instead is we could do a curve to mesh and make these curves meshes again. And then we could do a edge neighbors, I guess, no? Edge vertices. And then we could do a vector mass distance, and we could take the, say, 0.1 and 0.2, this the distance between 0.1 and 0.2, and we could then delete geometry, edges, compare if 0.1 and 0.2, it doesn't take that, okay, are larger than 0.001, and we want actually less than 0.001. And if the edges are smaller than 0.001, the distance that we generated our points on, is going to start deleting them. Now you could, to make it safe, increase this 0.002, but 0.001 also works perfectly. And this is something that can be exposed as a parameter, and we can change it to change the tolerance or the threshold. And you have your edges. Now, how do we take these back to where we took them from? Now, there are a few ways. One of them, you can sample the UVs of them, and you could sample the UV surface, and that's how you can like take it back to the original geometry that has animation, or maybe this is still, but you don't want the UVs, obviously. So to fix this, we could do sample UV surface, and here we have our UVs. We can actually, we could do something much better. We could take the original geometry and then take this as well, and then where can we place? This should work, but let's actually not take the original geometry. Let's take the geometry, or the whole geometry, and sample nearest surface, and this should be vector. We also want to store named attribute. We could, by the way, convert this back to curves now. Mesh to curve. connect this to here, and we want to save UV map. This is our UV map. We want to do either on points or face corners. I don't think if that's much different. It's much different. Okay, and we want to do named attribute UV map, and we want to sample the nearest UV map of this mesh to our generated curves. Let's make this 2D vector, or yeah, 2D vector works. And then we have a sample UV surface. We want our original mesh here. And we can sample UV map, and the value is position. Okay, now if we set the position of these points, it should work. And as you can see, it makes problems. Okay, to fix this, there are a few steps that we need to take into account. First, let's do 2D vector. Let's do face corners. Doesn't work because it doesn't have face corners. Vector or 2D vector doesn't make much difference. Or we could actually, it's better to take the original mesh in this case. The reason we take the original mesh is because we don't actually have much geometry to sample the nearest surface of. So that's why we want to take the original geometry. And as you can see, even the original geometry still makes problems. The problems it's making because it's going outside the bounds of this geometry. I don't remember how I did it on the original one. Let's check it out. I think the way I did it was that I took the original geometry, set it to its UVs, and then also did the smoothing without that extra step. There's a much simpler and more concrete way of doing this. I'll explain that in just a second. But the way we did it here is that this is much more complex. Set position, that's how we set the position. And here we take the input geometry, we take our ripped and then we take the input geometry, we sample the UV surface, which is this new UV surface. Okay, let's go. Actually sampling the newly generated UV surface. Okay, this is actually what we did. This is exactly what we did, isn't it? This is the original mesh, and we are sampling the UVs of the original mesh without any holes or anything. And this is the original UVs without any changes. Okay, that should work. Sample nearest surface, and then maybe this is actually weird. It should work. As far as I'm seeing, we're not changing much. Get back here again. This is sec2 vector, this is point 2D vector. This is everything that we just did. And it's still refusing to work. Let's copy this. I don't think if this should be a problem with my setup. This is as far as it will go. Okay, so we have the original geometry. We're setting the position to the UVs. We are then sampling the nearest surface of the UVs. Here we connect this to this, and this is also this guy. Come on, I did exactly the same thing. This is just weird. Honestly, just weird. Sample nearest surface, this UV. Like, this isn't important. Come on. Maybe, just maybe. No. Set position. Sample the nearest surface. UV. The same names are the same. Same UV. Same UV map. This just doesn't make any sense. Oh, right. Yeah. Actually, yeah. I was sampling the UVs of the generated mesh, so that's why it wasn't working. Okay, it should work now. Wait. No, it actually should work now. Connect this here. It's just weird. I'm doing the exact same thing, aren't I? We're taking the geometry, set the position, sample the nearest surface of UV map, sample UV surface, which is the UV, the sampled UV. Oh, we are doing exist. Oh. Swear to God, some of these problems are. Okay, so I hope you understood what I just did here. If you haven't, let's go through it once more. So we are taking the original geometry, the initial geometry that we created, and then we are like the original geometry, not the initial geometry that we created, the original geometry, and we are sampling the nearest surface of these UVs, of these plane UVs to these mesh curves, mesh to curves, or these strings, so that each point on the two ends of these strings have the same UV as the original mesh. And then when we sample the nearest surface, sample the UV surface, and we sample the position, we can set it to the exact position that we want. We have to erase this actually. Okay, so let's clean this up. This is already 36 minutes. Thank you. And yeah, no matter how much I try, I never manage to like make my videos shorter. Like I know right now I just wasted so much time trying to figure out what was happening, but like even on guides and tutorials, like the smallest ones, I still have problems making them short, even though if I'm like saying everything clearly and I don't face any problems. With this one I'm going to take it much easier though. Like if you want it, just watch it. You could speed up the video, or maybe like skip the parts where I don't make any sense. But yeah, I'm going to take this one much simpler and easier. And yeah, that's how you create your strings. But obviously this is not done. What you want to do is that you want, for example, them to be, I don't know, pushing outwards or maybe a little going down. The way you can do that is first you need to store or capture your normals of the original mesh, of the plain UV mesh. So when you can do another sample nearest surface and sample the open mesh, and then sample the normals, normal to value, and yeah, and that's how you get, let's call this, I don't know, N2, something like that. And that's how you get the normals of this. The other thing you want to do is, I think I'm going to push this down before I do the sampling, or maybe I do it afterwards, I'm not sure. Let's do another set position, and let's actually increase the number of points so that we do have something to work on. We could do a subdivide curve, subdivide it like 4 times or 5 times. Then on set position, we could do a spline factor, a spline parameter. The reason I told you I'm not going to bother so much about how much this video is going to take is because I usually care too much about it. Like I end up having to cut or record multiple videos for like 5 hours straight to get like a 20 minute video. And with this one, I know it's going to be long, so it's going to take lots of time to record something perfect. I'm going to like stamp it or make it easier for you to understand on the final YouTube that you are watching, and final video that you are watching on YouTube. And then let's do a normal. And this is the simplest way of like pushing these down. And let's do a vector mass. Let's do scale, normal, and then how do we scale it downwards? Move it down. And then let's do vector, and let's do another scale so that we control this, the intensity of it. Let's reduce the intensity. And it's doing it weirdly, but it's going to be fine. And then let's bring both of this down, both of these points down, and create the middle point. This is how you push these points outwards. As you can see, it's not working perfectly because we are using the normal of our curves. What we want to use is actually the normal of our mesh that we just save here as N2. So if I connect here, this to here, it's going to look much better, except I want only one axis. So let's do a vector mass. Let's do another vector mass. And let's multiply our normals with the scale. And let's only do it maybe on X and Y. Okay, it's not working. Another part that isn't working. Wow. It's just, come on. Should be working. What I like to do is actually go for the second, more exact method. This one took me so much time to make it perfect. Not perfect, whatever. This actually should work. N2 is sampling here and is sampling the normals. And why isn't it working? And points, vector. Yeah, this actually should work perfectly. Not sure why it's playing. One of the reasons this might be happening is because we have moved the position of these points. And right, so we could tilt this and that would fix it, I guess. Let's set spline, set curve tilt to maybe 90 degrees, and it's not working either. Okay. Come on, let's see what I did back in the day. Same. Oh, I'm not saving the UVs, I'm setting the curve normals. Okay, that makes sense. And then we set the curve normals again based on the geometry that we had here. Where are we setting the curve normals here if we are not using it? That's weird. We basically don't need this, and we are using 28 milliseconds of... No, we are actually, because that's how we are using it. Okay, that actually makes so much sense. Let's get back to geometry nodes, and here we don't want to do N2, we want to set curve normals on 3, and we want to set it by this normal. We do have timings, don't we? Okay. And we want to sample this again and get the original geometry that they are being sampled on top of. Let's also clean this up. The thing with geometry nodes is that there's so much to do, and let's also maybe subdivide. I think I subdivided it before, or maybe not. Yeah, I've actually subdivided before I'm doing anything else. You're also going to set the spline type to NERP so that it's much smoother. So let's get back here. The thing with geometry node is that you're going to have to experiment a lot. You're going to have to just not give up until you get something right. The first time I get this threads the right way, it took me, I guess, it took me a long time. It took me about 5 hours of just figuring out how to do the threads. And I'm not a math like expert or programmer, so that's why I also have a lots of struggle trying to figure something out, even the most simplest things. Let's also set the spline resolution because we don't need 12 cuts. It may be 5 is okay. Okay, and let's capture our normals. I'm not sure where I'm using these normals, but it should be fine. And then maybe move this down so that we know it's being sampled from the same thing. And then set curve normals again and to this guy. To the geometry, to the actual geometry. This is our actual geometry. We are sampling its normals. And then if we set the position now, we could get don't have N2, we can get normal, and it's not working. Perfect. Why not? Maybe this one. Yeah. Let's bring this down. This is downwards radius. You can see this part is making problems. Now you could leave it alone because it's not that visible, but what's happening is that this point is being connected to 2 other points, so you could experiment with these values again. Let's do 1500 for instance, and that fixes it. This is how much these spines are going to go down. Minus 0.002 or minus 0.01 is actually a good number. Now you can notice that some of them are pushing way too down because they are too small, it's too visible on them. So what you can do is that you can get a spline length. A spline length is the same across the entire spline, and then you could do a mass multiply a spline length by our scale value. As you can see, that's going to fix that. And we have our curves pushed down. Now it's not done, we need to push them outwards as well. So the way to push them outwards is that we get these vector float scale to push them outwards. We can get, I think we should get the normal. And we could have probably just added this to this thing. It should work, but it probably won't because it loves me. Come on. Something here isn't working properly. So this is all right. We are not sampling any values. be set. And it's working. Okay, so what we can do is actually we could just take this and bring them here, and then we could do a vector mass, add, and add this. And add this previous normal to this one. Let's actually put this here just for cleaning up purposes. And this is our value for scaling outwards. Let's add this afterwards. Let's copy this and delete this. And basically we have a value for pushing outwards, and we have a value for pushing in outwards and downwards and outwards, sorry. So this one controls how down they are, and this one controls how out they are. This helps make sure the threads aren't going into the skin. And voila, we have our threads. Then the rest is really simple. You could do a set position, do another factor, and then you could do like a noise, and then maybe a normal, the same normals that controls how down they are. Which one was this one? Okay, so we could take, for instance, this one, then multiply it by, I don't know, the noise, and then do set position. And it's weird. Let's increase this to maybe 100 or maybe 200, and then also let's take factor again. By the way, all this could just be added again to the same thing. So actually let's do that, so that it's much more cleaner. Okay, so this one goes forward, this is the add, and we want to add some noise to it. Also, your noise could be added only to the downward value, so that means we don't need any of this. We could just do another multiply, and then do this, and as you can see, it's going to affect it like that. Or better, we could do add and a multiply, and what value did I have here? Minus 1.2 or minus 0.12, and then add our noise to this minus 0.2 value. And as you can see, it has directions right now, and we don't want directions, so we can do a map range, map range, and map it from 0 to 1 to minus 1 to 1. And as you can see, we just added some noise to our threads. And yeah, that's it for how to create the threads. The other way you could do it, now I'm not going to go very into details for that one, is that you could forget about this, forget about everything that we did here, because this does make problems sometimes. Sometimes your edges are so close to the border of the mesh that sampling the UV surface just doesn't work. And that's when you want to use a more exact concrete way of doing this, way of transferring them back to the original mesh. And for that, we are going to talk about it right now. But I'm not going to go into details on how it's created because it's not my way. It's like, it's a, do you know like surface deform? There's a surface deform modifier. The way this surface deform modifier works is that, say you have a cube here, or you have a bunch of lines here. You set your base mesh as the surface deform modifier and you bind it, and no matter how much this mesh changes, it's always, those lines are always going to follow the exact location that they were binded to. So this is how to, and you can then do a join geometry and join it, and you can do a like a set curve to mesh. You could do a curved circle. Do like a very low number, 0.001 maybe. Do 12.5, 0.1, 0.2. Okay, and that's how to get this. You could also do a fill caps to fill the caps. Now, you don't have any UVs on these, you don't have any UVs on the caps, you don't have any UVs on the body of the splines. So the way to fix that is like not complex, but it's a whole other talk, like 30 minutes of talk, just how to make sure both the caps and the body has UVs. It's like I created this setup curve to mesh that does this entire thing to make sure both caps and bodies have UVs. You can, I'm not sure if you could copy this. I'm not sure if it has enough resolution for you to copy it. Maybe if I make this much larger. This is basically how it's being done. YouTube compression is probably going to ruin it. So here are close-up shots in case you want to copy this exact thing. So that's, I'm not going to explain it because it's going to take so much time just to explain how this thing works. But in case you want to copy it, there's that. And yeah, geometry nodes. Okay, so we have created the threads, and that's the basic way of creating them. Let's get back to class report. The way I'm doing the exact method is that I'm using the GN surface deform v4 by Caramel something. Don't remember his name. Such an awesome guy. I emailed him and he allowed me to use his GN surface deform modifier. I changed it like a little bit so that it works with my setup more easily, but basically this is the same thing as the surface deform modifier. You only do all your changes on the flat UV mesh or flat UV threads, and then take it back to the original mesh. Okay, so to learn this, I'm going to link it here probably at the web page to this. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I just forgot how to talk. So how do we create the phrase or the threads? We have created the threads. This is taking 59 minutes. Awesome. So much that I'm not even sure what I'm talking about anymore. How do we create the furs and fuzz, the fuzz on the islands or the fur on the edges? This is going to be very simple. The best way to do it is just going by exact, because the method I'm going to show you is way too complex. In fact, yeah, I'm going to show you the method I did, but do it with exact. It's much simpler and much more accurate. So you again create your like furs and I don't know, everything, and it just works with that method. God, this is so much work here. Like, this is what we have to do. And can I just go through this? Because I don't think even if I remember any of the things I did. There is so much. I should have called this video like how to make threads instead of how to replicate your own class stripper. This is depression, by the way. Oh god. Now this is already 1 hour. I'm not going to talk about this. There's too much happening. So basically, no, there is no basically. It's not basic. What? Am I actually going to go through this? Let's just go through how it's made, because I don't think if I'm going to remember everything exactly like how everything is made. So basically, the first thing, we created this smooth geometry, this smooth version of what we had here, right? And then what we do is that we'll take it here and we'll turn it to curves. Now you can see that I'm taking the ripped V group and fair V group, and I'm then adding them together to make sure I'm getting this entire edge at the same time as the vertex groups, as the ripped areas. I'm getting the frayed edges, as you can see here, and their vertex groups. So I'm adding them together to do that. And then I'm storing the fair map. What is the fair map? The fair map is essentially a map which allows me to say, hey, this is the long furs and this is the small furs, because in certain areas, I need a smaller furs because they are threaded. I don't want the furs to be overlapping with the threads or make them invisible, like cover them. I want the threads in that area to be smaller. So what I'm doing is that basically I'm taking the fur group and blurring it a little bit so that it's a smooth transition. I'm also taking the spline length. Now, why am I taking the spline length? Because if I were to take this directly back to my original mesh, what would happen is that I needed to resample by a spline length, and if I change the mesh, if the mesh were to stretch or expand, that spline were going to change the lengths. So I'm going to capture the length before I'm doing that, so that I have a constant length that I can use to generate the points from. And I'm also creating a direction switch. The way I'm creating a direction switch is that I'm capturing the mesh position, and then I'm subtracting it from the position and getting the dot product of the curve position from the mesh position, and getting the dot product of the new position that is created, of the vector that is created. And then if it's less than 0, it's going to be a switched curve. What that means is that basically, also you can see here, it's the actual mesh, so that's why I'm able to get the position of the entire mesh and then subtracting it with the position of these lines that are generated. I can't do it with simple lines. I have to do it before it's turned into lines. And the reason I'm doing this is because, say I have multiple, say this is like I don't know, number 2, and this is number 1. This number 1 maybe have fares downwards, this number 2 maybe have fares upwards. So what I want to do is to make sure their directions is the same, so that all the fares are being generated downwards or to the outward position of the original mesh. That's why I'm creating this switch. And then we are setting the position with sampling the index, because we already have the indexes of the original position of like this mesh. Let's get back here, and we already have the position of this. So once we turn this back to curves, we have the exact same indexes, so that we can easily set the position back to where it was after we have saved the spline length, so that we won't be getting any weird numbers of edges or samples or instances. Then I'm also using the same thing to sample the nearest index, which is, for instance, the edges are coming from here, so the nearest index is something here, something on the border. I'm sampling the nearest index, and I'm sampling the normals. The reason I'm doing it on this guy, on the original mesh, instead of, not the original mesh, the whole mesh, instead of using it on the curves, on the edges, is because the edges don't have any normals, but this mesh does have normals. This is not straightforward at all. Okay, and then I'm sampling the nearest points here to create the curve normals, and I'm using the direction switch to reverse them, so that I make sure all the curves are having the same direction. And now I have my curves, but how do I know where to have my fares and where to have my fuzz? The fuzz is being generated on all the curves with the exact same size, so I don't have to worry about that. I can sample this entire generated curve directly to create the fuzz. That's the fuzz. But to create the fare, I need to know where the fare is being generated on. Now, there are a few ways you could tell where the fare is being generated on. You could use, for example, the cyclic. We could use is cyclic, is spline cyclic. And if I preview this, you can see that the cyclic splines, the splines that don't have any fares on, are going to be white, and the ones that are going to have fares on are black. But what if the mesh is one whole square, or maybe I have fares all over the borders of that mesh? Then cyclic wouldn't work, because it's already creating a cycle. So what I can do is that I can get my fare v group, fare vertex group, and it's going to be this, and evaluate it on the spline, so that the entire spline is going to be averaged on the entire spline, and then use a less than, and say if it's less than 0.1, delete it, so that I have only the fare vertex group and the edges that are generated after creating the holes, because they were connected together to each other. And then I'm also using the resample set to count, and using the spline length to resample them. I don't actually need to resample. It's better to resample after we have deleted the extra meshes. It'd be faster, but let's actually see how much. No, let's not see how much time it takes, because this has already took 1 hour and 10 minutes. Okay, and 0.33 and 0.70 aren't that different. Just you do it the right way. And as you can see, we have our points and our curves. And then we can sample lines on them, and you can see if we don't take our switch here, and if we don't create our direction switch here, and we don't reverse them here, they're going to be different. But if we do have them, they're always going to go outwards of the original mesh, or the whole mesh, doesn't matter in this case. And then we realize them and do exactly the same things, like we subdivide them, we freeze the curves, we do, what is this? All right, clumping. How do we clump the curves? Well, that's going to be fun, because if we use the hair clump that comes with Blender, where is hair clump? Hair curves. If we use this, it's going to change depending on our object. Let's say we have a 0.01, and if I go to edit mode and select these and try to move them, as you can see, I know nothing is visible, but I have actually grabbed something because we know there is a mesh there. And if you move this, as you can see, it's going to change very, very bad. And if you use this type of clump, which right now the values are set in a way that the clumping doesn't look like the hair clump, but I can change that. For example, I can come here to where, and then we have a clump factor, clumping probability 1. As you can see, if I move it now, they're going to stay perfectly put, not change much. Now again, you could have used like the GN surface modifier and sample the surface. It's much easier, much not faster. In case of making, it's faster, but in case of rendering or computing, it's a little bit more performance heavy, like very, very small percentage. Sorry. And yeah, so we can't use that. The way I'm clumping is that I'm again creating these spline indexes, spline islands, and then I'm creating the fur clump selection, which is an island I'm creating, saying, for example, how many of these furs are going to be clumped to each other. And this evaluate on domain is going to take each spline, recognize each spline as one island. So each strand of fur is one island. And then I'm doing this mass, and don't ask me how I got here, like, oh god, this one took me like 4 hours to just figure out what to do with it. And then I'm sampling the index, the position, and then setting the position to create clumps, like create manual clumps so that they have a fixed index and they won't be broken. Just copy this, like this is how I'm doing it. Or again, you could have used hair clump, but you should have afterwards used the GN surface modifier. That's much easier, but this is much faster. I mean, not much faster, but I didn't have GN surface deform modifier at the time. And then I'm freezing and then resampling again and again. Create these furs. The same principle is happening on fuzz, so they are not different at all. The same thing is happening here, and the things you see here are the same principles that we explained, except certain parts are removed so that GN surface modifier could work better and faster. So here, if we check it out, we could, for instance, where is this? Let's say we don't have any of this, we don't have threads, we don't have fuzz. And for fur, it's taking 38 milliseconds, and if it's exact, it's going to take 103 milliseconds. Now, it's not much considering how much easier it is, but when you're painting and you're painting too many different holes or tears, this is going to add up really fast, like a lot. So this fast method is, even though it has much more paint to be made, it's much faster. And the reason I'm telling you I'm not going to talk about how these things are made, like just copy them, is because honestly, I said it before, I'm not a math expert. This is the result of hours of grinding, hours of just connecting different things together. Right now, after 1 hour and 15 minutes of talking, I'm not even sure what I'm thinking about. Like, I did know what was happening back in the time, but I don't have any idea what is happening right now. So that's why. For instance, this equal is creating a selection of the middle strands, of the middle furs. This equal here, let's actually view this real quick. Let's do a compare. Why am I not seeing it? Okay. Oh, yeah. Why is nothing is visible? Because we know this is working. What is this? This is fur and we are sampling it. Oh no, it's not the right fur. I'm using the same clumping principle for exact because it's faster than the traditional Blender clumping node. But the way we want to do this is actually here. So if we connect this here, you can see that it's giving each spline a certain index. And then subtracting this from this multiplied value by divided floor. What? Have you ever thought, like, have you ever been in this position that you make something and then years later, or even in this case, it's like months later, you come back to it and you're like, I used to be smart. I used to do things, achieve goals. And now I'm not even sure how I've made this. What it's doing. Let's see. When you multiply it, nothing is visible. Okay. And then you subtract it, this number, so that you get these strands, that single strands. Like, I know what is doing. I don't know what is happening. Come on. Yeah, it's doing the right thing. It's because okay. And then I'm sampling the position of these splines to the position of their near splines, and then using the factor to take them closer to this middle splines. Like, I'm not sure if I'm making any sense. It's actually very simple. The simplest part is here. So I have this separated splines, and I'm taking the position of all the splines and then mixing it with the position of these splines, so that when the factor is applied, the factor here is 0 and the factor here is 1, so that this curve is going to go like this and it's going to clump to the middle curves. And the way I'm making sure that it's only getting the nearest position is by how am I doing that? I'm also, oh yeah, I'm getting the distance of these two positions using the threshold and for clumping probability to make sure they are being clumped the right way. Oh yeah, it's the index. It's the index being made here that is driving it's the index being made here that is saying, hey, these indexes are going to be sampled with the same with each other. So basically what I'm doing is that, say I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 splines in a row, and I'm dividing this by the first clump selection, so that it says, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, and if the divide selection is 5, it's going to, and its flooring is going to be 1, 2. It's going to divide that 10 splines to 2 5 spline groups. In this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and the selection is going to be, comp selection is also 10. And then I'm multiplying it by the same number, by 10 again. I'm not sure why. Now first clump selection is being multiplied by 10 and then subtracted. Let's actually see what this one is doing. Huh. So I'm not sure why I'm multiplying here. The 10 with the 2's. So I think it's because I'm making islands so that it's 10, 20, 30, like that, not 1, 2, 3. I think that's the reason I'm doing that. And then subtracting it by, why am I subtracting here? And subtracting it by the original index value to probably get the middle ones, but then I'm also dividing this by 2. Oh right, yeah, I'm dividing first clump selection. This multiplication is happening so that we get back our numbers, our splines indexing, and then I'm subtracting it by the overall indexes, so that we get, for example, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then what I'm doing is that I'm dividing floor. Let me put it this way. I know I'm not making any sense. What is happening here is this multiplication is actually making islands back to their 10 groups. So say we had 1, 2, 3 sets of 10 spline indexes, spline islands, right? So multiplying this back by 10 is going to create 1, 2, 3, 4, and if we check it out here, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10. And it's going to be 9, not 10. We don't have 10 because it says starts from 0. And it only happens when you subtract this multiplication by the total number of the splines that are generated, by the total indexes, not the number, but the indexes of the splines that are being generated, so that we get 1, 0 to 9 indexes in our 10 index selections. And then we are dividing first clump selection by 2, so the number is 5, and then we are saying if it's equal, if this 10 number is equal to 5, then we want the divided by 2, we are going to get the middle one. We are going to have a white, which is here. This is the middle point of our 10 spline selection. I hope I'm making any sense, because 1 hour and 24 minutes. Okay. If you have questions, feel free to ask. I will make another video specific to your question, because I'm not sure even if you are going to watch it till now. Yeah, watch it till this point. Are you watching? Did it help? Did my explanation of this craziness help you understand what is going on here? Because if you don't have any knowledge about geometry nodes, or if you are a beginner, you're going to have a very hard time figuring this out, like I was. And now after looking at it a little, I actually understand what is happening. Basically, we are creating clumps of 10, and then we are creating 1 to 10 indexes in those clumps, and then we are saying if those indexes are equal to the divided maximum by 2. And if yes, then show us. And then we are multiplying by 4. The reason to multiply by 4 is to make sure. No, but why are we? Okay, no. We are multiplying by 4 to create steps, and then adding that to the indexes is going to help us create those islands that we were looking for. So the sample index only samples the islands, the position on the islands, like this middle one with its neighboring 4 brothers or 5 neighbors. In this case, it's 8 neighbors, 4 on each side. And then mixes it so that they are clumped to the new position. Yeah, easy, perfect. Like there's nothing to be worrying about. Like super easy thing to do. And imagine what's going on here. Like I don't have any idea what is happening here. Smooth tangent. What's tangent? Yeah, he is really smart. I'm going to link this in the description as well. It's the easiest way to do this, except it takes a little bit longer. And if you're doing this, then you can easily do like hair clump, instead of creating this clump selection way of doing it. And that's it, I guess. 1 hour and 30 minutes almost. My throat hurts, and yeah, I don't know how to talk anymore. My brain is tired. I hope this was helpful. I know I'm not a good teacher. I just thought of sharing this with you. Like, I hoped I was of help in case you wanted to replicate something similar, or you had the geometry node set up and you maybe bought it, maybe got it free from me, and you wanted to like look at the nodes and see how the things are working. I hope I was of help explaining them. And yeah, again, I'm not a good teacher, but this is also very complex, and hours of just talking. Like this thing took probably maybe weeks of just problem solving and banging my head to the wall as someone who is not a programmer, who is not familiar with any math, just banging my head to the wall to make this thing possible. And even after I made it possible, I found out about G and surface deform. I mean, I did know about it, but I didn't want to use it. But then I decided to create the exact version, because sometimes my method doesn't work for more complex versions. So yeah, I hope I was of help, and If by any chance you have any questions, any problems, didn't understand any specific topic, or if you want more explanation, if you have a problem on something completely different, feel free to ask. If I know how to answer it, like if it's related to this, I'll do my best to create a much more clearer video explaining that a specific topic and not try to fit it into the entire video. And if it's a problem with something completely different, or if you have a question, I'll also make sure to answer if I know how to do it. Thank you for watching, and damn man, you actually watched until here. Thank you. Thank you so much, and see you on the next one.